Hi there, Glocal citizens. It's Florence Adu, your host for the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around doing something in the world. My guest this week is coming to us in a two-part interview, so he'll be with us this week and next week. He is a singer, songwriter, music producer, and designer that originates from the D.C. area. He's currently based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. So we're happy to have Kenny Allen join us. And in part one, we're talking about his inspiration, his background, and how he came to be where he is in Ethiopia. And in part two, we'll, as usual, get deeper into the business of the conversation. So please relax and enjoy my interview with Kenny Allen. Kenny, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so happy to share this time with you. And I'm based in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, but I'm currently on a little holiday in my native country.
Yeah, you're doing a summer vacation.
Yes, summer vacation.
Holiday, as we say it on the other sides of the world.
That's right.
Right. So, Kenny, tell us more about where in DC you're from and where are you local and what exactly is your craft?
Okay, well, I've grown up in Silver Spring, Maryland.
Okay, I live there once.
Yeah. Silver Spring is a little bit of a melting pot of a lot of people and nations, and so it was always very interesting to meet people from around the globe, and just happened to find myself meeting an Ethiopian singer. Her name was Wayna. And
wow, I've seen her perform.
Yes, and Wayna had been singing with Stevie Wonder for some spell of time, so some tours or whatever. But before I go into that, I'll just say I have been making music and producing music for about 25 years, and also sort of fashion became an extension of the music, and I'm sure we'll get all into the deep details of it. So yeah, just currently in Maryland, Bowie, Maryland, with my family, and just enjoying summer, escaping the rain.
Right. So tell us more about your local experience in Ethiopia. So you mentioned you saw performer Wayna, and did she inspire, or seeing that inspire you to choose Ethiopia? How did you choose Ethiopia as your current home?
Well, I was a part of a very emerging music scene in on U Street in DC in the mid to late 90s into 2000. And I was doing a show with Wayna, and she was performing in front of 3,000 Ethiopians. And she asked me, "Hey man, why don't you play a couple?" I was playing guitar and doing backing vocals for her, and she said, "Why don't you play a couple songs to sort of open up the show for us?" And I didn't really think too much of it. I just felt like I was going to just be me, and that's what I did. And somehow the people were connected to it. Like, I was really not playing Ethiopian music or anything like that. So the promoter of the concert was opening up a venue in Addis Ababa, which is the capital of Ethiopia. And he was like, "I'm looking for somebody who's singing Western, quote unquote, music. And do you know anybody like this guy who might want to come for 6 months?" And so she was like, "Well, ask him." And I had been touring with a lot of artists before that time, and had been around the world in Europe and Asia, but I had never been on the continent. So I was like, well, as long as I have a ticket home, I'm down for seeing and exploring and seeing what it could be like. And that 6 months now, 15 years later, has turned into an amazing journey with tons and tons of great stories in between.
Okay, so you went for 6 months and you ended up relocating.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, at the end of 6 months, I mean, during that it was an adjustment. It was like it was like sort of a rebirth to sort of adjust and adapt to a whole new way of life. And by 6 months, I was sort of at least able to communicate basic survival phrases in Amharic, which is the local language. And I was taking trips on my own outside of the capital. Yeah.
Oh,
So after about 6 months, I was taking trips and learning a little bit of the language. And yeah, I didn't feel like that was the end of that experience, so to speak. So
okay. Okay. So you went there for music and you ended up staying. So how did you parlay that? So 15 years ago, whereabouts was about 2005?
yeah, that was 2005.
Okay. So the music scene here was, tell us more about like the juxtaposition between the music scene here and the music scene there, and what grounded you to be able to be there and actually establish yourself in a way that allowed you to be a professional musician in another country.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's actually pretty deep. I mean, the what was happening in DC at the time was it was basically the beginning of a neo soul movement,
Right.
like conscious hip hop, conscious R&B, an extension of like what was happening in Philadelphia at that time, but with its own kind of its own flair. And we had a great bunch of people, a great cast of artists who were sort of cutting their teeth on in the open mic poetry scene, like specifically a place called Bar None, which is on U Street.
I remember that place.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that was really where it was happening. And but at that time, I guess people's wings were expanding beyond the wingspan of, one corridor of a city. And we just all sort of started branching out to find our place. It really, so at that time it just kind of made sense for me to sort of go and experience something that I would not have experienced in that sort of day to day scenario. And in fact, when I went to Ethiopia, like it really was, I was really doing cover songs, but there was an era in Ethiopian history where they did not have much access to the outside world. So
Mhm.
the 80s was like a time where, a few records came in and they were nostalgic. So, I mean, I grew up on those songs, but I actually never really even performed that kind of music. But I came in like, oh yeah, like on like a rock and roll splash, like I'm in Africa now. This is awesome. So I had an energy that they had never really experienced because their musical performances were a lot of like five singers on the bill. Each singer sings two songs and says thank you and leaves the stage. And I was like doing 2.5 hour shows without a break, with full energy, like concert style. And very early on, I discovered that if I were to learn Ethiopian music and Ethiopian songs, I could really connect to the local people. And what was happening, the place was called Harlem Jazz, and a guy called Emmanuel Mokria was the guy who brought me there with another woman named Jordana. And what was happening is there was people from all walks of life who came every Friday for what turned into like 5 years to really enjoy what was happening. And it was something that never really happened. There's a very sort of class and financial status thing that happens that usually prevents people from all walks of life to socialize together.
Mhm.
But I had created, or me and my band at the time, or in those times, had created such a universal expression that it was just like, really, really, it was like a movement in a way. And it really was a beginning of a live band revival that is actually still prevalent today.
Interesting. So tell us about the Addis that you arrived in versus
Mhm.
the Addis that you live in now, because I think that there have been, I want to say not miraculous, but serious changes in Africa, most African countries, most African major cities in the last 10, 15 years. I've seen it in Accra, I've seen it in Nigeria, I've seen it in most countries, most African major cities that I've been to. So tell us about how Addis has changed.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that allured me in the beginning was it sort of felt like a small town and a small village inside of a, what we would think of as a city. And it was very, you could go one place and go to the next place and see the same people who were at it moved in waves of familiarity. And I quite like that, and coming from DC and having traveled a lot, through the States and abroad, it was such a bigger thing. And what I liked about it at those times was it was quite concentrated and it felt very like family, and over the years, like, there's been so much development and so many roads and even like an increase in other foreign nationals coming to Ethiopia and doing business. And so it's really just quite expanded in an unthinkable exponential kind of way. So that, for the most part, it's just the expansion. Everything is expanded. The skyline, there's thousands more buildings. There's the main road used to be one way each way. Now it's four lanes each way, and everything just expanded. I quite actually liked it the way it was when I came. I didn't really come for that, to be honest. Like, I
Right.
came for the the simplicity of it.
Sure.
And one of the things, though, having a Western mind is like, yeah, you can grow those things, but every aspect of the culture has to grow, with that in order for it to feel, organic and for it to feel complete. So I feel like we have in Ethiopia at the moment, there are things that are light years ahead of where they used to be, but certain cultural isms and certain like things that it's kind of like skipping the landline phone and going straight to a cell phone. You
Right.
know, it's
Yeah.
like a lot of those things are missing, and so it will take time for it to complete its sort of cocoon to butterfly evolution. But it's exciting, because there's, with the perspective that I have from not being from there, but also the sensitivity and the cultural considerations, it puts me in a very good position to be at the forefront of sealing the deal, if you will, as far as like the evolution.
Yeah, I get it. So now I want to go back a little bit because music is your identity and it's your profession and it's what you have basically well, music and designing, but let's focus on music for the moment. How did you come to be a professional musician? From a business perspective, what is it about your upbringing and about how you were able to leverage your personality, your resources, and what have you to be a professional musician?
Yeah, well, I mean, I come from a musical family. Both of my parents are musicians, so
Hmm.
it was actually it's very strange because I just thought everybody had musical talents and wrote songs and played piano and guitar and bass and drums, and I was quite unaware of that it was a lane that I was in that not everybody was in. So
Okay.
it took me, like, actually, I didn't even think about music as a quote unquote career until after my first year of college, where I came home for summer break and one of my best friends had just broken up with his girlfriend. He's like, I got a song and I think you play piano, don't you? And I was like, yeah, 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 of course. And then he's like, I want to record this song. And so that was the beginning of a whole journey, the extension of the journey that really started when I was 3 years old. Like, afternoons while other kids were playing football and sports, I was, in a music school picking up instruments,
Mhm.
just occupying my time. So I think, I have this feeling that you kind of are born with the tools that you need to become who you will become. It's already there. So it's about tapping into that, that gift, if you will, or that, that sort of head start on a genre or a direction of life. So, like, it's always been in me, but when I really got into it, it became a passion. I couldn't stop
Okay.
trying to get better at it or try to learn more.
Okay. Okay. So how did you first make money doing it?
Well, I mean, I became, it was all based on songs. You write a song, you record a song, and then you work for the song. Basically, it's a dying art. Because everybody these days in music is sort of working for their image. But in the beginning, when I first got into it, it was all about, hey, I made this record and I got these songs and we need to perform them. So it was an ecosystem of selling, getting a gig, even at a local venue, and setting up your merchandise table and selling CDs. And I was one of the first people that I knew that had a professionally produced CD. What I mean by that is like the packaging was like any other packaging. And even I have a friend, he was like, when I first saw that record, I was like, well, what label is he on? And it was just an extension of, I got in on the internet really early. I had a friend who took me to the computer lab at University of Maryland. That's where I went to school in 92. He was like, man, I want to show you this thing called the World Wide Web. And I was like, what? And I mean, that just blew my mind. And I was already making websites by 96. So the extension of having a product and then selling it was really natural for me. So it was like the gigs, and you made money on the gigs and selling CDs. People actually bought CDs at the gig more than they would at a store. It was that moment that you kind of cashed in on. You just poured your heart out on stage and you say, hey, can you just buy my CD? It's $10. You're like, yeah, of course. Like,
yeah, I've been one of those. I have a lot of $10 performances. And that's one of the things that I miss a lot about, first of all, being here in the summer, because live music is traditionally so much a part of summertime. And so, I mean, we'll talk a little bit more about how business is changing and how you're doing things differently based on the pandemic. But I want to take a sidestep. And so I have this kind of question that I ask, which is the why, the where. So you've kind of touched on how you got to be living in Ethiopia, but I want to get a little bit more detailed into how you came up to be living exactly where you are. So, Addis is a fairly big city. So how did you choose which neighborhood? And then how did you set yourself up in working and playing and creating a community in that?
Well, when I first went there, it was sort of part of the deal. Like, I had very modest accommodations early on. Mm-hmm. And I was really kind of in a one room with a bathroom kind of situation in a guest house. Sure. And then one of a guy that I was producing, his girlfriend was leaving a place, which is actually where I still live. And I'm very, very fortunate enough to have been given this opportunity to find a place like I have. There are literally no more houses on my block. They're all buildings. And I have been there for almost 13 years, the same house. It's completely unheard of with anybody who's been in Ethiopia for that long. I know people who basically move every year. So the point is related to your question is like, a lot of times it's the right place at the right time. And to get to the right place at the right time, you got to go places. Because to get to the right place at the right time is not like it's like the lottery. Like, the more you play, the more you're likely to win. So the fact that I had sort of made myself a fixture, in the scene, I inserted myself in the scene and created a sort of brand. And that's now, when you look at it this time later, less of myself do I think of myself as I'm a musician. I just think of it as a spoke in the wheel of the brand that I've created. So I think that idea and that concept, we can no longer be sort of specialists in an already specialized arena or field. We have to be able to, especially in Africa, like Africa is the home of invention, because not everything is available. So it just makes you think so out of the box on how to solve modern day problems in unorthodox manners, So I think that's something that I've learned first and foremost, is like, there's no problem I consider to be unsurmountable.
Yeah, that's a very African mentality.
Absolutely.
East to west. I haven't spent much or any time in East Africa yet, but I recognize that there is that spirit of the continent that is everywhere. And so similarly to how life was when I first moved to Accra, basically, and I think and we could talk a little bit more about this. I think being a creative puts you in another different situation to
Yeah.
be able to be a fixture anywhere and be and mix with people and meet people and connect all the dots, because I found that same thing where if I just went out, I would meet people and things would start to open up and things would just, that's basically how it works. And I think that's a little bit of what, most of our cultures are like. It's very socially based.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't have a school network or something that's kind of formal based on living there and growing up, then it's you socialize, 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 and socialize more.
Absolutely. And I also feel like it's a situation that if you put yourself in a scenario that you can offer something that does not already exist. This is also a very like when if it's a subject of choosing where you settle down that's outside of your normal thing, I would definitely recommend that you offer something that is unique, and that's what allowed me to sort of stand out and have even people checking for me, like, well, hey, Kay, I've got this place, I'm about to move out, it's like sort of making a monument of yourself within your surroundings. You can't go to a place and then just sort of like entrench yourself in a cavernous existence.
Right.
It has to be, if you stepped out on a leap of faith of so forth, you gotta kind of go hard. You go hard or go home, basically. So, and also, like, I mean, another thing in my case is that I also got involved in business very early on, just due to the fact that I had these ideas that had never really been implemented. So people started to look to me and like, solutions to emerging modern problems. Like, hey, we want to open a club. What kind of sound system do you need? And I'm like, I know sound systems. I know this music thing from the inside out, from backstage to front of house.
Sure.
These are the things you come with, that knowledge and that experience. And that's one of the things that especially in Africa, to have a unique and different and distinctively different experience also gives you some leverage, and that's, from that, I was able to sort of get resonance and permit, through business and sort of investing in that local situation.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense. So speaking of the local situation, I heard you doing full-on interviews in Amharic. I mean, you are probably one of the very few of my guests that lives abroad and speaks the local language and you're not native to that place. So the question is, this is where it's the Glocal Speak segment. And so we want to hear what you hear. So I asked my guests to share a word, phrase, or saying that is a meaningful part of your local experience and why or how you came to value that as Glocal Speak.
Yeah. Okay. So anytime I go any place, I think the first thing that I always try to learn is how to say thank you.
Sure.
Because I think that's the most universal expression of gratitude, and it actually, we know that it touches you. If you do something or if someone gives you something, you say thank you. That is like the most powerful like thing to say in someone's native language, and that is the word I remember asking first. How do you say that? And
Yeah.
I'm hard. You say amaseganalo.
Say it again.
Amaseganalo.
Amaseganalo.
Amaseganalo. If you say that, you will fancy the pants off of any Ethiopian person. And I would actually also say another one, which is also quite a more universal thing, Selam, which means peace. And Selam is a very widely used word.
Yes.
People say Selam, no? It means like, literally says, do you have peace? But it really means like, hey, what's up? So.
Sure.
So those are two words that really stand out in my mind as like, the quintessential vocabulary start in Amharic.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay, cool. So we can say, Salam. Say it again. Amaseganalo.
Amaseganalo. You're a natural. You're a natural. you are a natural.
I try. I'm ready for my trip to Addis. I'm ready.
Hey, come through.
Yes. Thanks for joining us, Glocal Citizens. As always, you can find us at www.glocalcitizenspod.com and wherever you find your podcast. Please do take time out to subscribe, to share, to comment. Particularly for those of you who listen on Apple Podcasts, but on any platform, I really, really, really appreciate your feedback and letting me know what you'd like to hear, who you'd like to hear more of, and the types of guests that are inspiring in their local context. Please do join us again for part 2 of my discussion with Kenny Allen next week. And until next time, bye for now.